in Pakistan. Unfortunately, I could not be there on ground, but at least I get an opportunity to talk to the audience virtually. Um, I've always maintained that in Pakistan we have known the what and why for the longest time. It's all about implementation and execution and the how part of it and the who part of it. And that equally applies to climate change. Now, where do we stand today? I think these are established facts that we are one of the most climate vulnerable countries. And while we deal with mitigation, the bigger issue for us, like many other emerging markets, is adaptation. Now, we do have some of the enabling factors, and I'm sure this has been um, um, described in detail by our climate change colleagues in Brazil at Belém. Um, but we have a lot of sort of those pillars in place in terms of NDCs, the National Adaptation Plan, the Climate Prosperity Plan, which has been worked in conjunction with V20. The report was handed over to me along with the projects when I was in Washington for the IMF World Bank annual meetings, and I'm sure it'll make its way back to Climate Change Ministry as well. We also announced the National Climate Finance Strategy that was last year in Baku, and is also very encouraging to see the central bank, the State Bank of Pakistan, have issued the green taxonomy guidelines earlier this year. So, as I said, we have a lot of building blocks which are in place, and while of course the financing gap is large, and we talk about in billions of dollars just for Pakistan, but it's also good to see how some of the IFIs, the multilateral development banks, have stepped up. I would like to mention Asian Development Bank, and also the 10-year country partnership framework, which we agreed with the World Bank in January of this year. And 2 out of the 6 points in this 10-year program deal with climate change in terms of decarbonization, and which is totally related to pollution and what we can do there. And I do appreciate and understand that the Honorable Chief Minister of Punjab was in Brazil in Belém as well, and she talked about number of very positive and constructive things happening in that space, but also about climate resilience. So we do have now financing available. It's $2 billion per year, and 1/3 of that has to do with climate change. Now, in terms of what has not worked out, I also want to be equally open about it, and I have been open about it in other international forums. The Green Climate Fund, I do think we need to bring down the level of bureaucracy, both in terms of accreditation and the processes which can be simplified, and also with respect to disbursements. And the Loss and Damage Fund, I'm sure this is a big point of discussion in Belém. It was Sharm el Sheikh where the whole discussion came up, and 4 years later it's still being operationalized. So we need to think through all of this as international community as we go forward. Now, in Pakistan, we are obviously also looking at climate action funds. Acumen is coming up with a $90 million fund. We're looking at international capital markets. In fact, it was 4 or 5 years back that a parastatal utility had issued $500 million of green bond, and at that time it was 6 times oversubscribed for WAPDA. So there is a clear appetite out there in terms of green investors, and we are still very hopeful that we will be, inshallah, issuing the inaugural Panda bond, accessing Chinese capital market before the year is out, and this bond is green in nature. Domestically, a lot is happening in this, in terms of green sukuks, etc., as well. Also, in moving forward, what we need to do with carbon markets, the province of Sindh has done a good job in actually bringing in some proof of concept projects around that. And then when I was in Spain, debt for nature swaps and other aspects also were brought up. These are still under discussion with us, and we are very open about it, but the narrative has to change from our perspective from a stress deal situation. The last thing I just want to mention here, that as we go forward, as much as we are looking for funding, financing from our international partners, equally we are looking for technical support and assistance in terms of capacity building, so that we can come up with investable, bankable projects which can be structured, monitored, and reported to international standards. So in addition to the funding and the financing part of it, the technical support for Pakistan would be greatly appreciated in terms of success transfers from other jurisdictions. And then, of course, it's a real pleasure to join the coalition of finance ministers for climate action. I do appreciate that, of course, the ministers of climate change in every country are taking the lead, but I do also appreciate that it's the finance ministers who need to step up in a very, very big way to mainstream the climate strategy, climate financing, and put it as a major, major imperative for the respective countries. From Pakistan's perspective, ladies and gentlemen, and that's where I would close, climate change is an existential issue. And while I, as a finance minister, along with my cabinet colleagues, very ably led by the Prime Minister, we are working our way in terms of the economic stabilization and inshallah towards growth, but the sustainability and the full potential realization of this country will only come through when we deal with existential issues with a real sense of urgency, and climate change is up there and it has our utmost attention. Thank you.